It was a powerful time. Well, we've decided to add a part 4. So I want to invite you to stick around and watch Family Friday part 4, because we're not that creative with names apparently. This is going to be a great time together. Thank you for watching. Hello, everybody, and welcome to
Family Friday.
That's the biggest crowd we've ever had for Family Friday announcement. I love it. We are here today. Obviously, this is Pastor Michael. This is Pastor Annette. I've got my son, Corbin, my daughter, Hannah, with us today. And we have 3 very special, I don't want to call you guests. You're not guests, are you?
Guest stars.
Star? What's the better word? Because you're better than guests, right? Okay, these are wonderful men from Central Triad Church. These are some incredible people that we have gotten to know over the years. And to my right is Daryl Moore. And to my left is Melvin Akins. And around the table over here is Travis Fulton. These are amazing guys that we have the incredible privilege to pastor, to pray with, to sing with, to learn the word with. And we've been, obviously, you saw our videos the last couple of weeks. Last week we put out 3 videos called Family Friday, Part 1, Part 2, Part 3. We're real creative apparently with names.
That's it.
And we called the first one The Talk, which was our family. The second one we called The Perspective with Officer David LeGrant, which I was thankful for him and grateful he came in and talked with us. And the last one we talked to Pastor Chester Beeman, right? And that was called The Reality. So today, we have you guys here today, and I hope this doesn't feel corny to people, but this was a way this was explained to me. And so I can put this bottle here on this table, and we're all looking at the same thing. Travis is seeing it, Melvin's seeing it, my kids are seeing it, and we're seeing the same thing. But on that side of the bottle, what do you see?
I see purified drinking water.
Purified drinking water. On this side of the bottle, I'm seeing an ingredients list and some stuff I can't read because my glasses don't really work for that small of a font. Hold on. Here we go. Over here, something else. Oh, I see Walmart stores and calcium chloride. And the way it was explained to me at one point in time was, we're all looking at the same issue, the same thing. But I can't understand what Travis is seeing until I walk around to his side of the bottle. And so that's what this conversation's about. I want us to we're having a conversation that's just, we haven't scripted it. That's as far as the script went, right there, okay? This is wide open, and it's wide open for a reason, because I'd like to know why Travis sees great value, purified drinking water, and why Travis needs to know why I see this on the other side. And once I learn what he sees, now I can understand something that I couldn't understand before. That's the hope and prayer of this session today. So as we begin our conversation, you're going to hear, maybe our kids will chime in, but we're mostly wanting to hear from these 3 guys here, but we want the conversation to happen. So who wants to go first? Talk to me about your perspective. Talk to me about what does it look like on your side of the bottle?
Well, okay, I'll start it off.
Jump in there. You
Just
got
go
this.
ahead.
Well, I'll just talk about what I saw on, I think it was May the 26th, the whole George Floyd situation. And watching that video, I was actually at work, and it was me and my coworker, a black coworker of mine, and I said, man, we got to check this out right quick. So we watched the video, and just horrific footage.
Yeah.
But I found myself, us both actually, we were just numb. Because, why were we numb? We've seen this time after time after time again. And it was just sad. And it's sad to know that, it keeps happening. And
right.
it feels like there's nothing that we can do to fix it. No one is actually, trying to help. Up until now. Now I see a lot has transpired across the world, starting here. Other churches, people speaking up.
Yeah.
So it's very encouraging at this moment, but there's still a lot that has to be done. We still need more people to speak out, need more voices to be heard. And from a black community, white community, has to speak out to help in this situation.
So you were at work,
mm-hmm.
and you made a statement, I think, that is obviously the true statement, which is we keep seeing this again and again. I actually tried to express that when I wrote a little post. And the post, I got tired trying to find words. Here we go again. I'm going to try to find something else nice to say. This isn't working. So I don't know what it's like to be Travis Fulton.
Right.
And I think that's what our kids and I were talking about the other day. We don't know what it's like to be in your shoes at your house or when you go to work or what you have to deal with. We don't know. We don't see. I don't see what you feel like when a police officer lights come on in the back behind the car.
Right.
I know in my car it's a little nerve-wracking. We go to praying immediately, right? But it's mostly not because of thought of death. It's mostly because I don't want to get a ticket.
Right.
So I'm asking, Lord, just let me have a ticket. Let me have a ticket.
Right.
But I know it's a different prayer.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that before we go any deeper, I think we know not every cop is represented by that individual,
Right.
or
Right.
those four
Right.
people at that moment. We've already just kind of discussed that. There are many wonderful, but we still see the moments.
Yeah.
What about you?
Similar to Travis, you know, obviously we're all on our phones. So, you know, things are coming through. And I saw the video, and again, similar to Travis, as I'm watching, I begin thinking, I am numb to this. I've seen this over and over. And the fact that I can watch a man get murdered, and yet I'm not feeling something that I should be feeling. Because we've become so numb to a situation like this. And
Desensitized.
it's like, wait a minute, this isn't right to feel this way. What I'm seeing is not right, but the way I'm also feeling is not right. And, you know, shortly afterwards, you know, you begin talking to other people about it and your friends and your close circle. And I remember just crying, couldn't sleep that night. I made a post on Facebook, and it was a letter to my son.
I saw that post.
Because it's hit me. You know, I have a son, and, you know, I didn't really think about it, but now I have a son, he's 7. And at what point does my son go from a cute 7-year-old to a threat? Is it 10? Is it 11? Is it 9? And so trying to sleep has been difficult, you know, at times, and just up thinking about it. Obviously, the constant seeing it over and over across, you know, and we've tried to shelter our son, to be honest. He's 7. We've tried to shelter him from a lot of that right now. Because if I'm traumatized as a 37-year-old, what is a 7-year-old
Oh,
going to feel? And you begin to ask questions. Why?
Right.
Again? What else is going, you know, when will it happen the next time? I should not be having those thoughts, but we've become so ingrained in this society where we know this is going to happen. And I found myself talking with friends, and we said, so when's the next one going to happen? You don't want to think that way. You honestly don't, but because it's become a part, sadly, a part of culture and society in which we're seeing these horrific acts. And again, it's not all of them. It's not all the cops. Prime example, I'm great friends with the police chief where we live, and he's given my son a tour of the, you know, so all the fun stuff. So for
your
me,
son has a good experience.
he has a great experience. So right now, there's a thin line, and I don't want to mess up the positive that he sees in law enforcement knowing to protect and serve.
Right.
Because I feel like that will be a detriment to his 7-year-old mind.
Yeah.
So it's been a lot. The last week and a half has been rough. It's been hard to focus at work, kind of continue with your regular duties and things of that nature because it's on your heart so heavy.
You made a statement, and I'm talking too much. Everybody just tell me to be quiet because I have a hard time with that. You made a statement. You said, at what point, because I know you're a little boy,
Yeah.
one of the sweetest kids you can possibly imagine, right? We get fist bumps every time he comes in the
Right.
room, except today.
Yeah.
No hugs today.
We're all staying COVID right now. But have to think, when does my son become a threat?
Yeah.
You know, that's a thought that's hard to take on.
Yeah.
The other day, my son, who is now, how tall are you now?
6'2" or something like that.
So we don't even know anymore. 6'2", 6'3", whatever it is. He decides to walk from my house to his grandmother's house, which is about 3 miles. We didn't realize he was even doing it.
I'm going to take a walk, Mom.
I'm going to take
Okay.
a walk, he said.
He's not typically the walker.
Okay.
And we're like,
Luckily, it's not that far.
now let's be clear. I think he barely made it there.
Wow.
He was
I've been out of the gym, so I'm sorry.
begging to get there, right?
Right,
And when he got there, he had them drive him back home.
Oh.
So let's just point that out too. But, you know, it was, if I remember correctly, it was somewhere around close to that time when all this happened again. And I didn't know he'd gone on a walk that far.
Okay.
And my first thought hit me was, I got a 17-year-old white kid who looks like a man, who's wandering down streets for 3 miles to another location. I didn't even know he was going to go there. So I didn't know where he was. I kind of panicked. I can't imagine it from a perspective of just because black means at some point he looks like a threat. And that's the thing I was trying to take in. And we'll come back to that. Melvin, what about you, man?
I think that I felt numb also, and I hate that that's the word that we keep using, but I think that's the only language for it. And I think the fact that we're all fighting internally with everything that's just happening in the world right now with this pandemic. Everybody's life has shifted,
Right.
and everybody's life looks different. And so in the middle of the world shifting and looking different, it's hard to realize as a black man that although the world around me is different, the ideology that runs this world is not different, and it's the same. And in the middle of a pandemic, I have had more time to process these things, more time to think about these things and be left alone with my own thoughts. And now that I'm separated from my community, this is all I can think about. This is all I can, I usually can process these things with people. Usually being around people, being at church makes me feel better.
Yeah, me too. I love people.
Being with people that don't look like me and we can all worship together, it does make me feel better. But now that's stripped away. Everything that we've used to kind of self-medicate has been stripped away. So it's black people are numb because we really had to sit into we had to feel the sting of this. We had to really feel it. There was no escape mechanism. There was nowhere we could go. There was nothing we could do. And yes, you're sitting on your phone, so every time you scroll, you're watching it, you're seeing the content. And I think that on the heels of Ahmaud Arbery,
Yeah.
I feel like when George Floyd, when everyone was saying, I can't breathe, I think that was the sentiment of the black community. Like, we never got a chance to catch our breath from the last time this happened. So now we just feel hopeless. We feel breathless. And I feel like I saw a post on Instagram the other day that just rocked me to my core. It says that most people think that we're grieving over George Floyd, and they don't realize that we're still grieving over Emmett Till. And I personally have been last year, I don't know if it's still on display, but last year at the African American History Museum in Washington, D.C., they had Emmett Till's casket on display. And I watched a maybe 40, 45-year-old woman weep over his casket. And it bothered me that she was able to, you want to go to a museum or you want to go to a place like that and be able to have a sense of pride because there's a certain level of detachment. Like, this is our past.
Yeah.
This is where we came from. But it's different when this is also our present reality. So we're looking at the world from a perspective of 1 century ago, but we still have the same, black people are still dealing with some of the same issues systemically that we were 100 years ago. Jim Crow may have dissolved, there may have been a civil rights act,
Sure.
but it's still embedded in the hearts of many individuals. And I think when you start thinking about that, what's embedded in my heart? What have the fear, the panic, you feel all of that. And I think that that's where the black community is. We're still feeling the pain of the last 100 years of this in this nation. And there's been no language for it. it's just been life. It's just been the struggle. You know, we say the struggle is real. That's a catchphrase that we use, but really I think that's what you're experiencing. We are struggling. We're struggling to feel safe. We're struggling to feel comfortable. We're struggling to find language for what we feel. And the language that we do feel, we don't know if it's acceptable to say. Like, I saw a lot of posts that said it's hard to find words or whatever. In my mind, I'm thinking, oh, it's very easy. It's 2 words, racism, and privilege. Or, segregation. Or it's easy to put language to it, but that's my perspective. Because this is also my experience.
Yeah.
And so I think we're seeing people trying to put language towards an experience that they didn't have. And people who have this experience using a language that people who don't have that experience don't understand. And so it's like we're having constant conversation, but we're not speaking the same language, so it's not being heard. We're not communicating.
Is that because maybe people think that if I start speaking your language, then that would mean that my world as I know it changes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely
that-
agree. Yeah.
So maybe for some, not for everybody, but I think that could be the case for some, because I can, we're seeing the conversations too. We're seeing it, we're hearing it, we're seeing it online, but you can kind of sense in some ways, if I ever see what's on the other side of that, then that means what I know might have to shift, what I do may have to change, what I've experienced may have to change. I think maybe, and believe me, I'm not trying to excuse anything. I'm trying to, on some level, maybe comprehend why the conversation is so hard. That doesn't excuse it. It just, maybe that's one reason. It would mean all of a sudden what I thought all this time isn't what I thought it was.
Yeah.
Or maybe now I can't think that way. Yeah.
Well, I think it has a lot to do. Nothing starts out as one thing and stays at one thing until for its duration. Anger is backtracked to hurt. And then with hurt, there is fear and mistreatment and those kind of things. Well, looking at it from a back to front situation, it's easy to follow that progression. But whenever you're just faced with the anger issue, rarely do people step back and say, oh, there was a great hurt there, or the fear that's been cultivated on both sides, like you mentioned, and then kind of what you said with from both sides, people don't really know what to say to communicate to each other. And part of it's they don't want to communicate. They don't want to admit that maybe what they thought was wrong or that they're going to have to change something. But I really believe that part of the breakdown is because they're not equipped to speak the same language. And
Maybe.
in fear of, not equipped, that's not a good word, but just are afraid that they're going to say the wrong thing and make things worse.
Yeah, and I think Melvin said that
Yeah.
well a minute ago, in the sense that people don't know. They said, what'd you say? They don't know what to say.
Right.
What words do I use? You're like, are you using these words?
Yeah.
Right? But they don't know that they can. What do you think, Corbin?
I mean, this is just a whole other level of diving into it, which is, it's great. I'm kind of lost for words at it because it's all very true. There's a whole language of it that we don't understand. And I don't really know how to either understand myself or help people understand. So I'm kind of at a loss of trying to think of, okay, now we know there's a language barrier, but how do we go about changing it?
Right.
So I'm over here trying to think in my head. I'm going, okay, what do we need to change? What do I need to change on my end?
How?
Yeah.
To help all the situation out.
Hannah, how about you, baby?
I have to agree with Corbin because whenever I want to talk to someone, I'm always like, okay, can I say this? Are they okay with this phrase? Because I know that my other friends, they're not okay with this phrase. So what's a common language that I can use where we can all be on the same page without worrying about offending someone over a sensitive topic?
Well, I don't have an answer for that, but I don't also, this is the household I got to take care of, right?
Right.
And so that is an interesting thing, because as pastors, we're careful what we say. We don't never know for sure when we're going to just make someone very angry.
Right.
But sometimes I'm very successful at it, not knowing I did it.
Yeah.
You know, I've done that several times in my life,
Right.
where I'm not sure what I did, but God help us and forgive me, please. So let's go to this, Travis. Since you started off, we'll come back to you. What's a day in a life? Okay, talk to me about the little things, the glances, the looks. What is it?
That I may see from other people.
For yourself, yeah. What's your conversation been like in your house about this process?
Just trying to process the hurt, you know, and the hurt in the sense of, you know, how this keeps happening and why we feel like there's nothing that can be done about it. People that we felt would reach out and support, we felt like there was a lack in that area. When we do try to talk to people to try to get them to understand where we're coming from and how we're feeling, there's pushback. Or you shouldn't say it. You shouldn't see it that way. It's like you're trying to get people to understand where we're coming from, but no one wants to see it. They want to keep their own point of view, their own perspective. And I feel like if there's ever going to be any change or any way we can overcome the situation, we got to be willing to sit down and hear each other's side and try to come to an understanding. Just take the time to listen.
Yeah.
And this is where we at. Just trying to get people to understand where we're coming from, how we feel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because if you feel like you're not being heard, you feel, or I can speak just from my experiences, which are not y'all's experiences, but you feel that your feelings are being invalidated. Oh, it's not really like that. So then it's being pushed aside to where, oh, God love them. But in their sense, I'm sure it's on both sides, but.
You sent me a video of T.D. Jakes
Yes.
having a conversation. I forget the pastor's name.
Last name Lentz.
Carl
Lentz.
That's it.
Yeah.
I thought it was either you or you. I can't recall. One of y'all sent. I think it was you. All right. And I watched that video. Of course, I'm a huge fan of T.D. Jakes. This is how it is.
Yeah.
Who doesn't want to preach like T.D. Jakes?
America's bishop.
Who doesn't want to preach like Jakes, right? I mean, that is wow. Okay. But he said several things today in that video that I was like, wow. He wasn't comparing the two things, but he kind of, in some ways, gave an understanding for those who don't understand yet, and I think we're all still trying to understand. He said, look how women have felt for all these years. Not believed when they spoke, right?
Right.
Not understood when they spoke up.
Gee, I think we had that discussion in staff last week.
Yeah, we did.
We did.
In a very positive way.
It did. It was really amazing, but, I was like,
But he was
not-
using that comparison in a
Right.
sense of, think about it. So when they do speak up, oh, you lied about it, or that's not real, or that didn't really happen that way. And so when you said the word pushback, that's kind of what I thought of.
Yeah.
I thought of that moment of hearing, because, when my wife's not being heard by me, pushback is one way to put it, but it's a negative, extremely negative scenario. So we're talking about history. We're talking about
Yeah.
hundreds of years. You're talking about a
Generations.
process, right? You're talking. You said the last 100 years still,
Or even more than that, but
right?
centuries.
Centuries. And so I heard that word. That's what I thought of. So I thought he did an interesting job of trying to make it more understandable
Right.
to some level, right? And I enjoyed that about that. What about you? What is it your day to day? What's it feel like? When you have these conversations with people.
To be honest, so everything took place, and then we've seen the videos, and obviously I've got white friends. Caucasian or white? Does it?
So that's a part of the conversation. We don't know what to say. That's the
Right.
first
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the first
Different
misnomer or the first
language,
And I get it.
anomaly we should get rid of.
Okay.
Can we say white when we're talking to white people?
I'll tell you what.
Or is it Caucasian?
I'm really white.
I prefer
Really?
snow.
I'm really white.
I'm like
So,
as white as
you
snow
know,
over here.
Glow in the dark. Almost.
She's almost transparent.
You can call me Ghost if you'd like.
When they're talking to us, white doesn't have any. white's all we understand. I guess I shouldn't say that way. White's fine. That's not an issue
Okay.
for us.
No,
I'm not sure
this
where.
is what he always says. You can call me anything you like, but don't call me late for food.
That's right. If you're making dinner, I don't
Just
care what you
call
call
me
me.
whatever.
That
He-
works.
yeah,
But, you know, I don't even know where Caucasia is. I'm still trying to figure that part out. I don't know. But,
Okay,
you know, that's
that
not an
works.
issue for me. White's
Right.
fine. Let's go with that.
So having black friends, white friends, again, I made the post for letter to my son. And I got people that responded and were like, hey, I had a white friend that reached out and said, more than the news, more than any other Facebook post, this resonated with me
Exactly.
because it's your child. And I have a child.
Yep.
My conversation is so different than what yours is with your son.
Right.
And this is what you see in black households, the fact that we have to pause and stop at a certain age and go, listen, this is how you conduct yourself so that you can come home. This is how you talk so that you can come home. And so you find yourself at times in the black community, you know, the term code switch.
Say it again.
Code switch.
Yes.
I'm not sure I've heard that term.
No.
You want to explain, Mel?
So
I'm gonna let
when you
Mel
code
explain.
switch, it means you have, especially black people, we have to learn to exist in a dichotomy of behavior. So
Okay.
you have to, when you're around your friends and you're around black people, you have a
Right.
certain behavior that you can display. When you are around white people or people of authority or different environments, you have to
Okay.
change your behavior. And the easiest term or the easiest way to think of it is like work. You have to code switch when you go to work.
Right.
Because I can't say what I want
follow
to say,
you.
like how I hang out with y'all and laugh and joke. Some of that may not be appropriate at work. So I have to code switch
I got
when
you.
I go to work. Well, black people, we have to code switch when we come out of our homes or into certain environments.
I got you.
Because it almost essentially pulls you out of who you truly are. And sometimes you can struggle. Can I be myself around them? Can I truly be who I am? Or for some odd reason, if I do something, do I all of a sudden become a threat again? Or is it, what is that all about? Your behavior. And so back to the message, you know, they said it's meant a lot. And she said, my eyes, I think, have been open because it clicked because I have a child and I never realized that I benefited from such a tremendous amount of privilege. Is it my job to judge her and say, oh, you've known that? No, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like you said, some people don't know.
Right.
And for me, it was kind of like a wow moment. Okay, this was just a post to my son, maybe to make somebody aware, but people began to reach out saying, oh my goodness, I didn't realize. And now I'm seeing your point of view.
Right.
I'm seeing what you deal with, which now causes me to look within. She later messaged me again and said, my husband and I had a conversation about your post and we talked again. And now we've made a decision that we've got to go a different route with our children so that they understand as they continue to grow what that's going to look like. But then again, you run into situations where if you're at work or you're working or you're on calls and you have people that are tone deaf. So you have people that don't, last weekend was rough, if we're honest. Last weekend was rough. And you get back to work and people are, hope everyone had a fabulous weekend and everything's great. And you're just like, I can't. I can't.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's just been trying to process it as best as I can. Trying to make some aware. Those that reach out, because I don't believe in pushing it on anyone. If you push it on someone and what you're feeling, they may not be ready to receive. But when I've had a few people that have come to me and said different things, it's like, wow, thank you for coming and reaching out. And they're like, well, thank you for listening. And I'm like, this is where it begins. It's dialogue.
Right. I love that it was the truth and the sincerity that resonated. And it's sad that I can't not see the letter you wrote and be a puddle to that again right now in the sake of trying to make this progress. But hearing you talk, how does that not deteriorate your faith whenever you say, I can be this way here, but to be accepted to be functioning, I have to change who God created. And I'm not talking about personalities, but something that causes you to question your very being, because God created you the way that you are as someone to hunger and chase after Him first and foremost, but to know that this is not what's really acceptable outside of His presence.
I think we've just been conditioned to it, and it starts early. It starts very early. No, son, don't do that. You cannot do that. You cannot. But Dad, no.
And that's done as a protective measure.
Yes.
Right.
Due to the consistent issue.
Right.
Go ahead.
I think that part of it is that when we were growing up, the only difference between now and then is that we got the correction without the lesson, because
Right.
Oh.
we didn't need it at that time.
Yeah.
Born in 91, we kind of had a little moment where the code word was we're in a post-racial society, especially when President Obama was elected. That was everybody's favorite terminology to use. Post-racial society, this is what America's moving towards. So I remember being in public places with my parents, and my parents giving me the look, and even them having the code switch on how they discipline me or how they speak to me, because we're in front of, we're the only black family in this store or in this school. It was always difficult at school you realize that early on when you go to school and children are just open, and you talk about your experiences at home, and the teacher looks at you and it's like, that's not true, you're lying. Your mom didn't say that. Your dad didn't say. They don't do that. And I'm like, all families don't do this? All children's parents don't walk around with the little purses that have the detachable straps and detach the straps and whoop you in Walmart? That's not an average home experience.
Or this one, this little.
Yes, the pinch behind the arm fat, the ears, that's not a normal thing. And I think that
Like that.
I didn't realize it. You don't realize it as a child until you get older. Now, seeing what we're seeing, there were no cell phones. It wasn't, I'm sure that this was going on back then in the 90s and the early 2000s, but it was not displayed to the magnitude that it is now. So now we have no choice but to explain these things to our children. Whereas my parents could tell me, don't do that, don't say that, don't go here. I want you here, I want you doing this. Like, calling me, where are you at?
Before you leave.
Check in.
That's it.
Let me know where you are.
Right.
But now, as I'm getting older, I realize that even as a 29-year-old man, my mother calls me every time I'm out past 12 o'clock to see if I'm okay. And it's not to see what you're doing or if you're okay. It's I'm just making sure you're still alive. Because she always tells me, be careful. And she always tells me, I have a little speed demon. So I know for her,
Yeah.
it is a very real possibility that my son could get pulled over at any time, because my son drives a little fast and he brakes hard. And she says, and she tells me I take corners all the time. But, so I realize now the fear that my parents had, and that what they did was they were trying to teach me how to behave, and so that I can come home. But they didn't have to have the conversation with me because I never saw it for myself. Javen sees it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now the conversation is much different now because it's visible.
Right.
So we can't just give the correction without the lesson. Now we're trying to figure out how to give the correction and the lesson
Because it's got a visual aid.
at the same time. And we struggle. It's struggling. And I want to say something to you too. What you said about not knowing what to say and how to start the conversation. I think that it starts here. And by here, I mean in the church.
Yes.
Right.
Our church is very intentional on being a multicultural church. That's the thing that we speak about. That's the thing we say. We're intentional about it through our music. We're intentional about it in everything we do, every aspect we do, we're multicultural. Well, part of being a part of a multicultural body means that there's a little bit of safety in these types, at least in these four walls.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when I'm here in worship, I look the same as you all. I feel the same as you all. There's no difference. Now, when I leave here, I go to a much different environment. We all worship this. We all have the same experience here, but we don't have the same experience when we hit the streets. It's much different. But I think that because we've chosen to spend the most intimate part of our lives together, which is our relationship with God, which is worship. That's the most intimate and vulnerable we can be. I think that these type of bodies, if we can be vulnerable, if I can be vulnerable enough to walk up to you and just embrace you and hug you, and sometimes you've spoken words into my life, and I've shared things with you, you know, we have that type of relationship. We have to translate that spiritual relationship we have into the natural. So we can pull that into these types of conversations.
Yeah.
So if you do have questions, since we have developed that type of relationship, I'm a safe person for you to say, I don't understand. What is this? And I love that the church is leading this conversation now. Because I think that that's what we're supposed to be doing. I think that this is a part of what you saw in January. This is what the wait is over means. This is the current of revival. And there are some people who revival doesn't look like. It may not look like. I was having a conversation with a friend today, and she said, you know, for so many years we've looked at Azusa. We've looked at all these, the day of Pentecost, as these are the outpourings of the Holy Spirit, and that's what he's going to do again. But what if these conversations is the revival?
Exactly.
That he's shaking our ideologies, that he's shaking what we believe. And I've seen more people in the church speak out. I've seen more people in the church invite me over to their home to say, look, I want to have a conversation with you, with my children.
Right.
This is where it starts.
Right.
And I feel like if I can share my spiritual burden with you, I can definitely share my physical burden, my mental, emotional burden.
Right.
And I think that this is where it starts. It starts here. I've been thinking about Pentecost a lot since, you know, Sunday was Pentecost Sunday. And I think about how there are people from multiple different backgrounds in that one room. They all had different experiences with Jesus. All of them weren't traditional Jews. We don't know who made up the 120 that was in that room. We don't know what kind of background they came from.
But we know from all around the world were there that day on the streets.
On the streets, and God gave them language. Who made, so someone, God gave each of them what he did in the upper room when he breathed on them. He gave them language to speak to someone who may not have looked like them.
That's right.
And have conversation about Jesus. And I believe that if we get together in here, I believe that he can give us the language to speak to people that don't look like us. And we can, the church would not have grown to the point that it did on the day of Pentecost had not everybody been able to hear the message in their own language. And it started with the presence of God. And so I think that language that we're struggling to find, the church is going to define that language because it's going to start in the presence of God. And then it's going to disperse from the church. He's given us language.
Time for an
This
offering and altar
conversation
call.
is language.
Yes. I love that, you know, you brought up Pentecost and about that 120. I kind of mentioned, and we've talked about that, you know, unity. We all think unity, it's everybody going in the same direction. But unity starts when the heart and the mind are set on truth. Not our truth or the truth, but his truth. And I never really looked at unity that way until I just happened across it, you know, just looking at Pentecost. And you mentioned Azusa. All my lands, do the research. Look at Azusa. Not the big flash that happened, but look where it started. Your mom wrote a brilliant dialogue, a script that we did years and years ago here about how Azusa started from a black man in a prayer meeting.
That's right.
That they were having
That's right.
such prayer meetings that they would meet in his home and they would march in this home around in unity, so much to the fact that the floor itself gave way. But it didn't stop them. They kept
right.
marching
Kept
in
pushing.
unity because they were unified in heart and in mind. And how many times has our heart led us astray and our mind concocted all these crazy things? But whenever unified.
I love that.
Pastor, you made a good point, or he made a good point about relationships. We heard the word relationships, and that, talking to my wife this week, talking to a few friends, that is what I've thought about constantly within the church, a relationship. You take a dating couple, and they meet the first date. Are they saying, I love you? 99% of the time,
They
they're
shouldn't.
not.
They might. I know a
They
couple.
might,
In the wrong way, yeah.
maybe they just think it
They might
for safety.
think
Think it, they may not vocalize it yet,
Right.
but they will soon. Yes.
So I was talking to my wife, and I said, you find, even within the church, we say God is a God of love. Yes, he is. And we say we love people. We love the hurting. We love the lost. We love the hungry. But within the four walls, do we have that relationship? So that, as I unfortunately stated, that unfortunately we'll probably see something like this happen again, without building a relationship, recurring meetings, recurring talks, because in a relationship you talk, you communicate.
Yeah.
Right.
But if we as a church body don't communicate on the natural things, when this happens, we're back to square one.
Right.
Black folks are angry, or white people, we don't know what to say, we don't know what to
come
do.
on.
Do we reach out? Because there's no relationship. And by building a constant relationship in which we're having recurring meetings or forums just to share, this is what my life is like, you share what your life is
Yeah.
like. You know what? I didn't think of it that way.
Yeah.
So that when another tragedy, God forbid, but if another tragedy occurs, now you all don't feel like I don't know what to say because I have a relationship.
Yes.
Right.
And I can go,
Right.
you know what? I am so sorry. I saw what happened. We've talked about this and understand the background behind it. I love you. I'm sorry. But versus the awkward silence or I don't really know what to say. But because we've cultivated a relationship within these four walls with the people we labor with, it becomes so much easier
Yeah.
versus creating division amongst ourselves, or, they don't need to know, or maybe they assume they know. But having those constant conversations, I think, will definitely help propel
Yes.
the body forward, and will be much better for that.
Beneficial for everybody.
I agree, and I think we're going to find more and more ways to do that, which is why we're doing this today.
Yes.
Even I was on a 2-hour-long Zoom meeting on Monday night, and the topic was about the white church. How does the white church respond in this situation? And we're starting to see that happen.
Yeah.
I'm seeing more big name people out there in ministry world say things that I haven't seen speak up before.
Right.
And it's been kind of wild to watch. Matter of fact, I think I even told one of you, I don't remember which one I talked to. I've talked to all you on the phone the last couple of days. I'm not sure which one I had the conversation with about what, but I remember saying, I thought about, could I find maybe some celebrity type person that we could talk to that would give us some, and then I thought, well, no, I'd rather talk to the people I know and love.
Right.
Exactly.
And so that's why we want, this conversation would mean more than a celebrity sitting here or some big name somebody, because that big name somebody may not be anybody tomorrow. I don't know.
Right.
But we know who we're supposed to be.
Right. Yeah.
And like you point out, in this room together, I would hate to think that, you said something that's hitting me still. I pray in this house, there's no code switching.
No.
I don't want to believe I don't know you. Did I say that the right way?
Yeah.
I want to know I know you, right? I want to know I know you. I want to know I know who you are. Don't switch it up on me, so I only find out the bit you think I can know.
Or that we can handle, or,
Yeah.
it's
Listen,
acceptable.
It's from a pastoral point of view, we end up being with people at some of the worst times of their lives. It's part of the calling. We're with people when death happens. We're with people when sickness comes in. We're with people when the worst moments happen. And sometimes in the worst moments, when you find out somebody who really, really are, right?
Yeah.
And that's the struggle. But having said that, man, to be in the same room with you. We finally had a service on Sunday. We finally had the one Sunday when we started coming back together slowly, right? We're doing it carefully. I think if you could see that, I got some pictures coming out, how we had everybody spread out in here. It was beautiful. We even took temperatures as we were walking in Sunday. We've done everything we can to make it work. But there's nothing like, you pointed out a minute ago, being in the room, an atmosphere where we're vulnerable to each other, accountable to each other, so that we can have growth, development, revival. That's the heartbeat of every real pastor. They want to see revival.
Yeah.
But you can't see revival if you're not willing to look at the brokenness of the people around you.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't expect it, well, God will take care of it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm here too, right?
Right.
We're here too.
We're his hands
You're
and
here.
feet,
There's
yeah.
got to be something we got for each other.
Right.
And I'm praying that this conversation that people are watching will grab a hold of something. You guys have mentioned some of your raising, and I'm just going to be very blunt and tell you that I was raised in some of the very similar ways.
Yeah.
The reasons weren't the same,
No.
Right.
and I fully acknowledge that. The reasons weren't the same. The reasons weren't the concept that if I didn't do it a certain way that I might die from an issue. The reason was you were not going to act up, period, right? And so my wife carried a wooden paint stir and a wooden spoon
Yeah,
for.
we progressed from a wooden spoon to a wooden paint stir,
Because
not the little ones, but the big
the beautiful
5-gallon
one to my left over here never had any issues. She's brilliant. She never. But this one right
Wooden
here
spoon, and she was good.
required. And one day I'll never forget. He snuck into her purse and broke the wooden spoon while she watched.
No,
No, he was
Why-
at
he was
Nanny's
at
house.
Nanny's.
Oh, that's right. He's at
And he
Nanny's
took-
house.
I was getting
Yes,
ready.
yeah. We would not have this available today if that would have happened.
Right there. So he was at Nanny's house. Did it for
Thank you
her.
for
Yes,
the correction.
yes.
I just
Mel-
saw
You
that.
just made Melvin thought I had been switching on him all this time.
Because she got him good if he broke that spoon in
Buddy,
front of her.
I'm telling you, it was. He broke it. I wanted to find out she had more than one.
Yeah. Yeah. And a good mama packs more than one device.
I've been in many a church service when I was a kid. You know, coming from a pastor's home, there are certain things you're allowed to say, and certain things you're not allowed to say. There are certain people you can talk to, and there are certain people you shouldn't talk to. Not because they're bad people, because they might repeat what you say.
Right.
And you know, so growing up, especially in the denomination, I think we both grew up in the same denomination,
Correct.
and you kind of know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You know, everyone was sinning, but nobody needed to know, right? We had TVs, but they were hidden, right? We had.
Is that a confession?
It's a confession. I'm gonna tell you right now. when we got married, I had a small TV, and we bought our.
I did not grow up the way he did.
She did not, but I was
like,
a different
"What?"
situation. So we bought a house, and it had a hole in the wall where a window unit used to sit, right?
the big
So I
square
enclosed the hole from the back, put a TV inside of it, and she made a painting that would click over it.
thing. You know, hinges
So
do wonderful
whenever I
things.
had to have youth meetings at the house, we would just cover the TV up, and you
I was
wouldn't
just
know there was a
being a good
TV.
wife.
It's sad, okay?
It is. It's pitiful.
But then when everybody's gone, I could pop the little painting off and come out, and we could watch some TV.
It messed up.
Everybody was sinning, but nobody needed to know.
Praise the Lord for deliverance.
Yeah.
It still
Everybody
happens
was,
today.
and you live on the edge of always being, who found out about what?
Well, it's exhausting
It is. It'll wear you
to
out.
pretend to be something you're not, or to have to work it in so many different angles. I wasn't raised in this, and
No,
so
it drove her nuts.
I'm just like, what do you mean they can't handle that? That's just who I am. He was like, babe, we can't do that. I was like,
Over the years, we have obviously developed and grown and adjusted and realized, you know, some of that stuff was good, but some of that stuff
right,
not so good.
not
so
so
good.
good.
And I'm thankful for what I had learned.
Right.
But the reality of it is that some of the stuff that was there, it's not possible. But let's don't go into that anymore. We've covered that enough. I've had enough confessions for one day. But
Anytime.
we got a confession room set aside.
Set aside.
But Travis, I don't want to stop. We can end just a minute. I think one more time around the table and just how you, after having this conversation here, I know this isn't changing the world or anything, but for you and your family, how does this affect you doing this?
Well, I think it's going to be greatly beneficial, just taking the time to hear the other perspective And I think, and I know it's not going to happen overnight.
Right.
It's going to be a gradual step. But like you were saying, we're all one body. We have to bear each other's burdens.
Right.
We have to come together in love, in unison, to try to overcome this. It's going to be a journey. It's going to be
Yeah.
a challenging one. But as long as we just try to love each other and understand that we're human. We're supposed to love each other. This is the humanity.
Human.
Right.
You have to care for each other. So I think that's how it works.
Let me, before I let you go, to me, it seems like, I want to go back to your word pushback you had earlier.
Mhm.
It seems like this is not the time, or it's not, to me, it's not the time for the pushback to sound like politics. And am I wrong to think that? Is that what it sounds like sometimes? When that's not really the discussion needs to be happening right now anyway? I seem to see that a lot, and I'm wondering, why are we so, here we're seeing tragedy, but we're talking about politics. I don't understand, because if politics would have fixed this, shouldn't it have fixed it a long time ago?
Long time.
Right.
It doesn't make sense to me. So do you deal with that? Do you hear it that way, or do you think of it, how does that affect you?
It's some political, but it's also, I don't know, I just feel like people's own perspectives, like they were never exposed to what we're going through. Like, it's hard for them to understand, and when you try to explain it to them, it's like, oh my gosh, what do you mean? I don't understand what you're saying. It's like they can't fathom
Yeah.
the experience that I go through, Daryl goes through, Melvin goes through. So I think that's part of the pushback. Yes, it's some political. Yes, we see what's going on in the country today,
Yeah.
but I just think that's where it resides.
You have a friend that I happen to know.
Yes.
Anyway, we saw him. I saw a report
Yeah.
where he has some young men he trains and develops and helps grow up, and they
Right.
do yard work type thing together.
Yeah.
And this happened, I think, yesterday or today.
Yesterday.
In Winston.
Yeah.
4 black men with gardening tools about to go to work, and I don't know who called in. Was that ever
It
determined?
was a woman.
Okay.
It was a white woman that
Okay.
called.
That called in
Yeah.
because there was 4 black men holding utensils, shovels, whatever, rakes out in
Lawn
the front
tools,
yard
yeah.
to do lawn work. And I saw that and I was like, oh my God. Of course, thankfully the police showed up, saw the scenario and realized this is nothing. But how ridiculous. And I to think you can't even, he's helping other people.
It's mentoring.
He's mentoring. He's developing people.
Investing.
And this is the lesson we're going to get out of it. And I don't know who the person was that called in. I don't know. There's no excuse for that ultimately. The only thing you can say is, I don't know if that person is living in so much fear right now.
Right.
I don't know. With all the stuff going on, we were driving back home the other day, and there's a high school next to the house we're renting right now. There's a high school next to it. And there's a line of cars, like almost a mile down that high school. I was like,
Yes.
and we'd heard the protest was fixing to
We'd
start.
just gotten the bulletin, curfew.
Got the curfew
8
fixing to come up, and I'm
o'clock.
going, are they starting here?
I'm like, holy
it's right by
crap.
the house. Or I was like, what do we do? What's going on? What's going to happen here, right? And I'm off. Believe me, protest is a good thing.
Right.
But I'm like, okay, what's going to happen?
Right.
And so I went back, I drove back around, got in line.
They were getting their diplomas, weren't they?
No, they weren't. But
They were getting books.
They were turning them in.
Oh, that's right.
But the funny thing is, we can't figure it out.
What do I
And
know,
So Michael says, I'm just going to pull up and you're going to ask. We're going to ask. I was like, well,
We're gonna
okay, let's
ask.
ask. So we
Roll
just
the window
rolled the
down.
window down. This poor kid, he was like eating a snack and he had like crumbs all over his. He's like, what?
Yeah.
And he's
What
like, what are
y'all
y'all
in
doing?
line for? Books. I went,
Turning them
got
in.
it.
Like, oh,
Because what do you
Right.
it's a strange time
yeah.
for a lot of people,
Yeah.
obviously.
Well, and with the news the way it is, that it's just, I'm going to say the word regurgitated, and sometimes it feels like
Feels like
that because it's just constant. And then it causes you to lose perspective, or I will say it will cause me to lose perspective.
Sure.
That it's all closing in
on
here
every
on
station,
me. It's
on
on
every
every
TV, on every
station.
radio.
Everything you see must be pointing to this because this is what, like for a better word, what you're feeding on. And I think you kind of touched on that earlier about what you're feeding is what's going to grow in you, and whether that is what's been ripped away from us as the herd that we are, because people are herd people, and sometimes
I
that's
say
good.
that phrase. She's quoting
Yeah.
me. I always say
we herd
I
people.
keep telling people that we're gonna all come back to church. Why do I know that? Because we love to be together. It's
Yeah,
gonna happen.
that's
We're
it.
herd people. We're gonna
Yeah.
herd up again, and it's gonna be safe. Blah 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 blah. But the point is, we like to be together.
Right,
That's
right.
how it is.
Well, and there is a safety for that, from that, and there is a building of the right things. But also, when we've been pulled out of that, it causes us to ask ourselves the hard questions. Isolation causes you to look more deeply at things, but it can also cause you to have that news in your face all the time, and we're thinking, great, is there a protest that's fixing to happen here? You know, is it gonna turn into something more than a protest? Or do we need to be involved in this? Do we need to get people away from here? You just start with all these things running through your head.
And that's just yesterday, right?
Yeah.
Right.
That could be tomorrow again. That could
Right.
be understanding why. So what's your closing thoughts on this I'm sure the audience is probably weary of us all by now, but what's your thoughts on it now?
Similar to what Travis said about the pushback, a friend of mine made a quote that said, "We have to stop arguing with people who are determined to misunderstand."
That's good.
Oh, that's really good.
Wow.
Because there's going to be folks that aren't going to understand where we're
Right.
coming from, what we're trying to share, and that's where that relationship comes into play. But for those who don't, unfortunately, you don't want to waste your time because you're talking to a wall
Right.
at times. And so I think cultivating an environment where open conversation, open, candid conversation like we're having here. I appreciate this because you and I have talked before in other mixed churches that I've been a part of where there was a white pastor. This was not brought up. And so you look at all these different tragedies that are happening and you're hurt. Who are you going to talk to?
Right.
You got to talk to your friends outside of church because the people
Right.
inside the church want to say, the love of Jesus, or it's under the blood, or,
Yeah.
God is love. But we're not going to talk about the issue
Right.
that's in people's hearts. And so for me, the biggest thing is opening the dialogue. I mentioned my coworker who wrote a message, and I said, can I ask a personal question? I said, why now? Why, if you don't mind me asking, are your eyes open? Is it so real for you now and now that you understand? Because in the last 10 years, we can point to numerous. I said, but if you don't mind me asking, what is it about now? Now, I can't judge her answer, and I respect what she said. She said, I don't know. She said, maybe because I turned a blind eye, because it didn't affect me.
Right.
She said, but, with
That's an
this,
honest answer.
it's an honest answer. I
Wow.
said, I can't judge you for that. And if you benefit from privilege, chances are you don't look at things that will negatively affect you or mess with you or traumatize you. And she said, between that and then being in this pandemic at home, you can't escape it. She said, I can't escape it. I cannot go about my day and go, oh, that doesn't affect me anymore, because I see it, and I have people that I consider friends that are going through it, and I cannot
Right.
ignore it. So
Compassion.
Wow.
just dialogue. That's
Part of the reason why we're at home
Yeah.
yeah.
is it, I think you pointed out a minute ago, this all may be the formula. Why is it awakening now? More because we're having to look at it.
Right.
Maybe that's part of it.
Ask ourselves the hard questions.
When before, I got to go to work. I got to go do this. I got to take care of that. I got to go there. We can move on with life. Maybe, what the scripture says, God moves in mysterious ways.
Yeah.
It could just be one of his ways to bring the revival we've been seeking but didn't know how to get to. And I love how you pointed out earlier about Pentecost Sunday. That was beautiful. I was ready to take up an offering and get the altar call. Do all at once.
I'll take it.
Hallelujah.
Cash app.
That's it. Let's hook it over.
Yes,
I'll
Lord.
pay my time.
C2C app.
It was good stuff, though. So, Melvin, how about you before we close out?
I'm just going to say this. I am now more than ever committed to the work. I think that there is an awareness. It's just like, and I hate to, no, I don't, because we Bible believers. So I don't
Yeah.
hate to make everything spiritual. It is what it is.
It is.
Just like deliverance,
Yes.
the moment that your eyes are open and you decide to disagree with the voice that's been speaking to you, you then have a window of time where you got to do some work.
That's right.
And I think that now that people are starting to disagree with the ideology they've held in their hearts for so long, they're starting to see it differently. Now is the time that we have to do the work.
Yeah.
So I'm committed to having these conversations. I'm committed to trying to help people to understand how I feel and also understanding how people feel.
Yeah.
Like, because I don't know what it feels like to grow up in a life of privilege. And that's something I need to understand, because maybe that'll help me understand why these things keep happening. It can't just be me talking, and it can't just be us not having a conversation. It has to be a conversation, and we have to be committed to doing the work. So sometimes in doing the work, you might get, you might have an accident. You might get hurt. You might
Sure.
get wounded
Sure.
when you're working on something, when you're building something. But you have to stay committed to the work. And I think that that's the place that I'm at. We have to have these conversations. So since now the door has been open to have them, why not continue them?
Yeah.
I don't want this to be a one-time thing where I've had this conversation and now I feel open to you and now I've exposed myself to you, and then the next time this happens or next week, this is just a conversation because it's the it topic.
Right. That's the thing.
We have to remember that it, for us, it's not a topic.
It's life.
It's a life.
Right.
So it's never going to go away for us. Well, it will if we
Yes, it
continue to do
will.
the work.
Right.
But we'll still always feel it in our hearts, and we'll still always know, because we'll have a connection to it. But I think that we have to be committed
Yeah.
to the work. And that's where I'm at right now. I want to have more conversations. I want to do more. I want to say more. I love the fact that Sunday, I don't know if you want me to say this, you can cut it out if you want. But Sunday, praise and worship and the service was incredible.
It was powerful.
It was incredible.
It was.
If I could have levitated and just shot on out, I would have.
I briefly did.
I said, Lord, this might be my Enoch moment. I'm going. I'm just about to go. But what people don't know is before we came out here, we had a conversation.
Yeah.
And we spoke about these things, the state of the world.
Yeah.
We spoke about what's going on. We talked to Pastor Michael about it.
Yeah.
We shared how we felt, and we all corralled around each other. We didn't hug each other. We were social distancing, but we all kind of
Yeah.
corralled around each other and lifted each other up. And so now, since that we've had that conversation, every barrier was broken. And so when we came out here,
Yeah. It was.
it was an overflow of us being joined at the heart level. Because a lot of times we come to church, we're joined at the spirit level, but we don't make it to the heart level.
Come on.
And so we were all connected by the heart, and our
Yeah.
thoughts were all in the same place. And so it goes back to exactly what Pastor Annette said. I want to experience that unity where my heart is one with you.
Yes.
So I can share your burden, so I can understand. Like,
Yes.
want to see one of the white members of our church sitting in there while we're having this conversation, uncontrollably weeping because they had no language and
Right.
they didn't know how to process it, and to hear us talk about it awakened them, and they realized, like, I have to do more, I have to say more, that meant
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah.
And we got to be committed to that.
Right.
I've got to be committed now
Yeah.
to now that I have opened my heart to that person, now I have to walk hand in hand with them. And that's the commitment from now on. That's where I'm at. I'm committed to the work. I'm committed to the conversation.
Yeah. Before I go any further, Hannah, you want anything to say? I know I haven't, you've been kind of quiet. It's my fault. I
That's
apologize.
not your fault. It's all been more eye-opening. But before I go any further, I just want to say I love each of you guys deeply and dearly from the bottom of my heart. I see you guys as my family. I want to make sure that you guys are aware of that. Okay? I love you guys so much. And I'm sorry for 1 second you ever thought that I didn't really love you. Does that make sense? I'm always going to love you guys. And I think this conversation's been great, and I think it's really going to help people to understand, help break down that additional barrier, and to help us to lay down that language that we all need so that we can all properly communicate with one another. So I think that this is fantastic, and I love you guys.
Big boy.
Love you too.
Love you too.
Me too.
This has been great. Just a whole lot going on, and I love it. It's, these are conversations that drive me because I love them. These are like, this is where we're supposed to be. This is the thing we're supposed to be doing. And it's just amazing that God allowed us to be able to have this conversation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because as much as it impacts us, it's going to impact someone else a lot more.
Right.
And it hits hard because I know someone out there is going to see this and go, wait a minute, I've been looking at this completely the wrong way for so long. What have I done? I love y'all. Thank you so much for coming.
Me too, man.
Love you too, Corey.
I'm a proud dad. You know that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I got two amazing, I'm a blessed man. Baby, you want to say anything before we close out? Really?
Trying to keep it
checking
together,
it.
man. Trying to keep it together.
For all those who've watched, you mean the world to us. I hope you can share this to your pages. I hope you can share it to your friends. This is the beginning of a journey, a great journey. I love journeys. I think journeys are cool. When we go on road trips, to me, I'm prepping the car. We get extra waters everywhere. Net wants a bottle of water at every possible position you put it into. We got snacks and bags that we can reach. It's about getting there, but I want to get there, and I want to enjoy the journey getting there.
Okay.
And so this is what this is to me. This is a journey. And we're putting all the pieces in the places they should be put so that we can feast along the journey and get what we need to get from each other. And so you guys have fed me today, and I thank you for that. I receive that. I pray your families are fed from this conversation today. So much, in fact, that I feel like after having this conversation, I should partake.
It's great value.
It's great value.
This was of great value.
And I've seen the other side of the label for a little while.
I see what you did there.
Hey, now.
Back around. We want y'all to know that this is, we're vested. We're so invested
Yeah.
in not just this, but in you guys. I mean, I think you guys know that. I mean, I love that we had this conversation on camera, and we've had most of these conversations with most of you guys in private because, as Melvin pointed out, as each of you have pointed out, Michael, about it's the relationship. And we're grateful that y'all trust us to have this kind of relationship with us. And thank you, babe. You did a great job.
We're blessed people, and that's great water.
Great value.
It tastes even better when you have a better understanding.
That's
Right?
it.
Yeah.
And that's a part of who we are. And that's the way it's supposed to be. We love you guys. Thank you for tuning in. It meant so much that you watched today. Like I said, please share it. God bless, and we'll see you soon.